What's going on YouTube? Today's video is going to be a long-term review on the Mid-American Q-Lathe and some of its products. I got this Mid-American Q-Lathe. This is the professional one with a big bore. For almost 4 years now, I have 2 videos on it, and I just want to do a long-term review on some of the products I bought to help me build some Qs. So like I said, this is the big bore. You can see this accepts almost 1.5 on the bore size when it opens up, which helps when you put Qs inside. So I know it should be less than 1.5. So I know I do mine. I cut my Qs down the dowels to 1.35 so I can fit it inside the bore. So, and then of course it comes with the slide. And if you look at this slide, all I did was I got this from Amazon. This is a quick release tool post. I had to do some Mickey Mouse welding. I'm not a welder, professional JB welder, certified, but this is actually, I weld this. I had 2 plates, drill some holes. As you can see, I messed up, so I had to drill another hole. This is actually some Mid-American screws, and it has the backings to hold this plate and just the regular bolt to hold it down. So this is how I modified it to have a tool post. And of course you have your tailstock. Biggest thing with the tailstock is actually having this aligned to the center of the head, the headstock. That's probably the most important, is having this very accurate. And the way I did that is actually having an edge, and I have a video on that, on how I made this accurate edge alignment tool. And some of y'all will see why I have 2 tailstocks, because when I was building the Qs before I had my CNC, I used this tailstock, and this is also offset, where this is not center to the center of this headstock. This is actually pushed off to the left or going that way away from me, so that I can have a taper on the Qs, the Q butts, when I'm making the Qs. So that's why I have 2 tailstocks. But now I have a CNC. I'll probably put this to dead center. That way I can use it for compressing Qs when I glue them together. I got this from Chris, and he got it. It's at qmakersupply.com on a care package, and you can see that. One thing I like about this is, like you can see, you just pull it and you can reset this. That way you don't have to move this. Say this is, like, if you look at it, it's gonna be in the way, right? Like when you loosen it. So all you do, pull it, bring it down, and then loosen it that way. So it's like a quick release. That's what I like about this. So, or you just loosen it with your Allen wrench, hex nut, and then tighten the tailstock, and then you can tighten that. This is one upgrade I received from the care package, and I put little washers. That way it doesn't go inside. I actually like these little products, so that's one advantage of it. So also what I received from Chris from Q Maker Supplies is this. This might be upside down, but this is the way how I like it, because it's flat on this side and has a slope on this side, so that it's easier. I use this actually to just hold my tools. This is to tighten up the chuck. And of course this is the wheel to move the slide. And then I drilled an extra hole here so I can put the Allen wrench, and then just put it through here. That way it holds it. And this is the chuck to tighten and loosen on the tailstock itself. So it helps me get more organized, as you can see. And that's all I did, was make these a little bit bigger, drill it, and of course I had to drill into the mortar and then put it in here. So, and then this I also received from Chris. This actually holds all the tool posts. So this is like my long boring bar. And he also received this. This is your collets for the shafts, and you can use it also on the joints on the butt. But as you can see, this fits perfect. Quick access. It makes everything look cleaner and looks more professional. And there's a little where I had to tap it in there, but I just put that in here. Also received these. This is the leather with the rubber. This is very helpful because of the rubber. because if you start building cues and you're actually using your tailstock to the headstock and you're drilling, and the material is very hard, as you're drilling, sometimes your material will be pushed in. But with the rubber, it actually grabs the wood a lot better, so you're not having that problem where you have to undo the chucks, reset everything, move the slides, and then start drilling again. So I just place them here, that way they're flat and straight. And the biggest thing is that this is the original size when you get it, but I cut it down so that it's a little bit smaller. But if you look at it, it's almost the same width as the jaws of the chuck. It's not bigger, but it's a little bit closer. That way I know that when I put it on, it's gonna be as close to the jaws itself, because this is a little bit too big, as you can see. In my opinion, it's a little bit too big, but it still works because you have all that extra space. Now the thing is, if you have this here, you can't get your slide and getting it flush to where you need to cut it. So if you want to really cut flush on the, especially using a cutoff on the cutoff, having this, and sometimes you want it flush and close to the material itself, you notice that you have to actually bump it out because it's hitting this. So now having the material sticking out a little bit more versus having this is flush, and I won't have that. And all I gotta do is I can get this cutoff tool as close as possible to the jaws of the on the chucks. So that's one of the biggest things. So all I did was modify it, cut it, and then I have 3 pieces. So if I want to do real quick, just use this one, hold the butt, and if I need this, I'll use it on the back end, on the freewheeling chuck. Put it on the back end and hold that grip on the cue, especially on the wood, hold it a lot tighter. So those are some of the things I use that I got from Chris on the care package. And if we go to this is what I was confused about, but this actually holds your calipers, which is awesome, because my calipers, they're on this little container, and that's not probably the best way to keep your calipers, but I use this one. This is digital a lot, so I use this one here. All I do is put a little magnet here, so that, because this is magnetic on the back side, and it doesn't really interfere with the front because it's all the way on the top, and then it holds it a lot better. Because the thing is, with these screws, it bumped it out. It's not a flush, where if this was flush with the material itself, the caliper holder, I probably didn't have to use this magnet. But with the magnet, as you can see, it floats and holds it perfectly. And then of course this one holds it a lot better because it has a little lip here and it has a lip here. But this is a little bit too small for this, but it still works. Normally it would be for this. I use this caliper also. This one's the standard imperial. It's not metric, because I use this because it's a lot faster. Because if I need to do 5/8, I have 5/8 here, and I don't have to do the math here, because I am lazy and I have a cheat code, because this tells me how many turns I need to do on the slides when I'm cutting stuff. So this will just give me 5/8 on a glance, and if I need to do 1/8, then I have a 1/8, so on. So that's the biggest thing, having a standard or imperial. But if you look at it, it also holds it with a magnet, so that's how it looks. So I just use it for this because this is my favorite, because this is, I can do all the math and it tells me really fast. So I also received this from Chris. This is where you use your dial indicator, and then you would put this inside here, and the way you would use it is you put it on the bed of the slide, and this will tell you how much movement you're actually moving from the slide itself to your headstock. So that's one thing, and then you can do that instead of having, the way I did it was actually putting a material in the back end and holding it with this and then pushing it against the back end, and that gives me my distance. I would never have to move my slide, and I just move the piece and then have this bump it, and once it hits a bump, that tells me the length, and then I'll start cutting off with the cutoff. But that's not as accurate as this one, because this will tell you exactly how far you need to move. So that's one of the biggest things. So with this, all this equipment, I also been using a gun drill. You can use the gun drill with this equipment. So this is the gun drill. I bought this, and this is how I am coring the cues now. So this is a little bit longer than 18 inches, and with the 18 inches I get the full length of one dowel, 18 inches long, and then that way I get the forearm and the butt sleeve at the same time, versus having it 12 inches, cutting it, and then boring the tails, the butt sleeve. But this is all at one shot. And probably the most important for this lathe is having, besides having a large bore head, is actually having this. If you're gonna start making cues, this is a motor that hooks up to the slide, and you have to actually do some modification. You actually have to drill and tap it on the slide itself, but this will mount in here. And you have I have videos on this where how to use this. Let me move this so that I can tighten it. This is already set where this pinion does not hit these gears, and it does not hit the backside of the bed. So this is a motor that moves this slide and automates it to move it back and forth. As you move it on this way, this will move it to the left of the bed, and then you move it this way, it goes away from the headstock. So this is important if you're actually going to make cues. Some people use this to just actually using it for making rings or making joints. I do not do that, because the thing is, I don't have a automatically stop, and if I'm not paying attention, I have actually crashed this into the headstock, and what damage it does is actually it messes up the teeth of the pinion. So you'll go through these teeth. These teeth are very soft, which is a good thing. You want this softer than these teeth. You want this permanent, because you don't want to remove this on the bed. You rather buy this and just have spare parts of this, because all you gotta do is remove it from the collet right here, and then these teeth will warp, and then of course you gotta get a new pinion, and then from the rack itself. But I actually crashed this before, and that was not a good thing. It hits this because I had it too close, and it hit the headstock, and the teeth goes bad, because this motor will just torque, because it's all geared inside, so it just has the torque to move it. So that's one of the biggest thing. So of course you have the control with the speed. This is the power supply, and then of course if it's plugged, I'll have it indicated on how fast I want it to go. I never got it all the way max. Normally I would have it, because this is only 12 volts, and its power supply is 100 volts to 240 volts AC, but it goes up to 24 volts DC, 3 to 24, and then you just control how fast this will move left to right. So that's one of the biggest thing. If you're going to start building cues and you want to do with this, you can actually do with this. Like I said, the big bore is really important, because when I was looking at lathes, and I called around and looked at prices on the internet, the biggest thing is why I went to a Mid-American Q lathe versus the other ones on the market is customer service. And I actually spoke to Chris on the phone, because he is in charge of Mid-American Q lathes. He is the proud owner of Mid-American Q lathes, because he bought it from Todd, and Todd passed away. So biggest thing I like about this is, one is the customer service. Two is, when I was looking at the Q lathes, Todd actually reached out to me. I texted him and I called him, left an answer machine. He actually reached back. The other person that I contact he actually replied and like this thing, because they never asked for a zip code and all this craziness. Is like, what's your zip code? It was like, not like, hey, I know you're interested in the lathe, how can I help you? Todd actually gave me that warm and fuzzy feeling, and that's why I went with Todd and got a Mid-American Q lathe, because these are pretty much like from Tag, because that's who actually pretty much makes these. So they always have that question, what's the difference between the other Q lathe maker and the Mid-American Q lathe? And I would always say they're pretty much the same, because the bed, the headstock, the slide is from almost like from Tag. So that's the biggest thing. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, it's TAIG, I believe. So they have all the parts. But Mid-American Q lathe, Chris will make it, and Todd is the one who made it. And biggest thing is, I asked for the big bore, and of course upgraded motor. This motor and power supply, this is like a 3/4, I believe. That's how many horsepower. It's a pretty decent motor. And one thing I like about it, it's a strong motor, and I actually have extra belts. This is the original belt for almost 4 years, but I actually have extra belts, because if you're working on Qs and your belt breaks, then you're actually out of service. But with the power supply, it upgraded the power supply for this motor, and this has actually a pedal where you step on the pedal and you can control the RPMs of your headstock, of the motor from the headstock. So that's one of the biggest things, because this one is not, the power supply is controls the speed of this headstock, versus on the basic, I seen it where you actually have to move the belt to get different RPMs on the headstock. So with that, you go to the power supply. This is what controls it. You have a little rotary dial, and you control your speed. So you can see, I'll turn this on. That's your main power, and this tells you which way you're gonna go. So this one is turning counterclockwise, as you can see, and you'll see how fast it goes from here. And normally you don't want to spin this without anything on the chuck, is because sometimes these will actually loosen and they can come off. So that's why you don't really do it. You have to actually have something inside and actually tighten it. But this is what turns it. I just leave this to on when I'm working, and I'll just have this on the neutral versus having it on, because this is on, off, on. So this dial moves it clockwise, and this one will move it counterclockwise. So, and then after that, when I'm done, then I just turn it off on the power supply itself. But I have a little dial indicator here. This tells me how accurate I am on my joint. Is when I'm putting a joint pin, making sure that the joint pin doesn't move around, and make sure it's stable. So this is just hooked up to a magnetic. So this is actually like steel. It holds it's magnetic here, but the whole lathe itself is really not magnetic. So that's the only thing. This is all aluminum, so this won't even stick here. So you can see it'll stick here, but it won't stick here, because this is aluminum. The whole base, the whole lathe is aluminum. So, and that's one reason why I like the Mid-American Q lathes, is, like I said, it was the customer service and what it can do. I've done some Qs with this. I made some shafts with this Q. You can actually do 4-point, 6-point, and 8-point, because this right here are your indexes. So I have my video where I hook up the router, and you'll see the router cut, and then with the taper, all you do is adjust the taper, and you guys should do your points. So you can index this to your 12 o'clock, and then rotate it to its 6 o'clock, and then lock it in. I don't have the lock here because I put it under. I'm just afraid if it slides all the way in, and it could mess this up. So that's why I don't have the lock here. I unscrewed that. But like I said, you can do 12 o'clock, and then bring it back to your 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock. That way you can actually have your four points. And then if you index it, you can do a 6-point, you can do 8 points. So that's one thing about having indexes here. But I removed that little lock so that it won't actually go in, and I turn it on and it'll mess up all these little grooves. I have some glue marks here. All I gotta do is get the razor blade, take those off. But what's the difference between a Q lathe, a metal lathe, and a wood working lathe? The biggest thing is, can a metal lathe, because I started off with a metal lathe, can a metal lathe actually do some joint work? Yes, it can. That's the biggest thing. It all depends on how big your spindle bore is, because they actually have some spindle bores where they actually have 1.5, where you can actually put the dowels in and actually do joint work. Because like I said, I started off on the metal lathe, and all I did was tips and some ferrules. Is it going to be as accurate as you get it? It can be, because all you're going to do is adjust your tailstock to your headstock. That's the biggest thing. Is you can get this Q lathe and actually do everything with it, but if you're not accurate from your headstock to your tailstock, then your concentricity is what's going to kill it. Having the same concentricity and making sure when you're drilling for your pin is having that as center as possible on the material itself, on the Q. But can you do it on a metal lathe? You can. Can you do work with a metal lathe? You can. A lot of people use the metal lathe, but the only biggest thing is, if you're going to get a metal lathe, you're limited because of the bed. If you get a 40-inch, this is 40 inches. The bed is 40 inches long, and if you loosen this headstock can go all the way to the 40, and I can put this tailstock all the way to the 40. So it'll be a little bit less than 40, but the thing is, you have all that room. And if you get a metal lathe, like an engine lathe, metal lathe, the longer the bed, the bigger the lathe, the more expensive it's going to be. That's one of the things. Can you do it with a wood lathe? Not a woodworking lathe? You can. I also done. I actually built a pool cue on a wood lathe, and with the wood lathe, the biggest thing is with the wood lathe, you have the bed, you have the length of the bed, but you don't have the big bore. You don't have the big bore. Now that you replace the headstock, I didn't have the big bore where I actually put the dowel through it and do accurate joint work, because the thing is, on the wood lathe, you're actually just using it with a rest. So you can build a Q with a wood lathe, but the thing is, how accurate are you going to be when actually putting the joint to the Q itself? Because on a wood lathe, this is pretty much what a wood lathe would look like, because this is how I use the indentions on my jump cues, and actually have that round end on the jump cues itself, because I actually use this. This is actually for a wood lathe, and this is how I get my indentions. So put it right here. This is how a wood lathe would work. You actually use this, and then you would carve it into your wood, and you would get the taper. Can you do it? Yes. But are you going to be accurate on the joint? You probably can, but it'll take you some time. But this one, like I said, as long as your headstock and tailstock is accurate, it's going to be really accurate. So that's why I actually like this a lot, having a professional Q making lathe from Mid-American. Like I said, I would have been able to buy other brands, but Todd, when I spoke to Todd, and he reached out and says, hey, I know you're interested on the Q lathe, and these are your choices. And then he actually spoke to me. His number was there, and Chris will do the same. That's one thing. Chris can give you guidance on what's the difference between your basic and your large bore head, or you can get a large bore head and just have the basics. Because the thing is, do you actually need 2 tailstocks? No, this doesn't come with 2 tailstocks. It comes with 1 tailstock. I just use it with the drill, and this actually extra chuck. When I think the basic has 3 jaws versus 4 jaws, and the thing is, the only thing is with this 4 jaw, I wish it was independent, like on a metal lathe where 1 jaw moves at a time. This actually moves together as a 1 unit when you put it together. So, and then that's how it will close. So you'll use this both, and then it'll tighten. This is actually modified extra. It comes with this. It came with 1, and I just bought the extra, because the thing is, you crank down the wood. This actually helps. The other one's all bent up, so that's one thing. So see, on a true 4-jaw, if you're on the metal lathe, you'll actually be able to move the jaws independently to the chuck. That's one of the biggest difference. On the metal jaw, you can move one jaw in, another jaw, and that's how you can get centers on your bearings. So like if you watch a lot of the videos, you'll see how they're getting concentricities and how they're getting it centered. Is they're moving one jaw in at a time. They'll move one jaw out and then rotate it, and then of course with a dial indicator, and then they can get that dead nuts, and they call it dead nuts, and it's very true. So that's one thing on the Mid-American Q lathes. And also comes with this part. This has a little grommet, like a collet inside. I'll move this. It has a split. That way when you put the shaft in here, it has different diameters. What I actually did also is actually used double-sided tape. Carpenter's double-sided tape. What they use for carpets, not carpenter, carpets. It's really strong, and it holds this inside so that it's freewheel. So this is where you would use, this is for just your regular chuck. I would just use this when I'm changing tips, because when I have to change tips, I don't have to lock this one. I can just push it in because I don't need the accuracy. All I just need to do is change the tip out, remove the tip, put a new tip on, and clean it up. Because the thing is, you don't want to touch up the ferrule and sand down the ferrule. A lot of Q makers, the ones that start, will sand down the ferrule and change the tip diameter, and I don't like doing that. So this one, like I said, this one is just for expedient. You just put it in, work on the tip, put it out. But if I'm like doing the ferrules, joint work, anything with the joint work, I'll be using this to hold the back end. This is like probably the most important, is actually holding the back end, is not flopping around. Because if you've seen my other videos on the metal lathe, I actually use the tailstock, 2 tailstocks, and put this tailstock in the hold the material so it doesn't flop around. That's one big advantage. Is it worth getting the professional large borehead Q lathe, like the Mid-American Q lathes? I think it takes a big advantage of it, because if you go with the basic, you're going to be limited, because later you would want to try to make a Q, and you'll be able to make a Q, because I wanted to see if I was able to make a Q, and I actually tried it and I actually did it, you know, because there's a lot of companies out there like Prather. I'll give credit to Prather. That'll get you your points if you don't know how to do points, and that's how I started, because I still don't know how to do points. But the thing is, Prather, you can get their the pre-made forearms, and you can get the points already. And if you Shimaki, they actually make full splice Qs. If you don't have all the materials to make a full splice Q, because you have to use a bandsaw and a table saw to get the jigs and getting the angles correct, you can. And then this will give you the finished product. That's one thing I like about it. I always give credit to where I get the wood on if I get it pre-made. Like I said, if I get a Prather pre-made, I'll tell them, hey, I got this from Prather, but I built the back end. This full splice Q is from Shimaki, like this Q. Like one of the Qs I made also from Shimaki. But the thing is, you can get the full splice Q, and you give credit to who made the blank. Like I always give credit to who makes the blank, because the thing is, if you don't give credit to him, you're pretty much just stealing the material. But the thing is, if you have a Q like this one, a new Q, I'll give you an update on it, since you probably have it on the videos and you saw them on my live, because I actually made this from this lathe. So you can see this one is a cord Q. This is a Purple Heart inside, and having this pin, I changed this pin, took this pin out. I took the pin out 3 times. First is a brass pin, not brass pin, a copper pin. It was a copper pin. I didn't like it because it's too front heavy. With this, I was able to remove it with the heat gun and not destroy the material. With the heat gun, loosen up the epoxy, and once I got the epoxy, moved it, and then drill it. You can see how center it is, because you're keeping your centers and you're getting that concentricity. That's the biggest thing, and you're getting that accuracy. So different phenolic and then another phenolic, and this is ebony. The Gaboon ebony. With a Gaboon ebony, we all know ebony is heavy and very dense, but having it bored out with the gun drill, and I was able to do it with this lathe using this gun drill. All I hooked up with a small compressor, open up the valve to a certain flow, and get my vacuum, because I did it inside the house and normally I'll do them outside. And I have videos that on my Facebook where I actually use the gun drill, and I was able to core this out. I took all the ebony out, and this is a 3/4, and I actually got Hollywood. This is holly. So you can see this was a one piece 18 inches. So you can see how the grains all are continuous. There's really no grains, but you can see how it looks. It's all one continuous piece versus having a small piece of holly, another small piece of holly, another small piece of holly, and putting it together. This is actually a one continuous. So this is holly, and I made all the rings, and you can see how accurate the rings are. All the same diameter. That's the biggest thing. I made my own rings. So this is a fiber ring, and then this is a nickel silver. Then aegis. With the aegis, I actually had to, like I said, move this headstock to a certain distance, move the tailstock to hold it for security, and never move the slide. And then once I move the material in and holding it from the back, because it bumps into here, that gives me my distance of how much I need to cut it. And I could actually, that's before I started using a dial indicator, but that's how I got my the white rings as accurate as possible, because these are all the same height, to make it look like they're not different diameters. That's the biggest thing, having different sizes. So did the aegis, and then it continues to 4 rings. You can see it. Of course I signed it, and then it goes to the butt sleeve. So this butt sleeve and this ebony is the same. So that way it's continuous. You can't really see the joint, but this is. And then of course the butt cap, and I tapped it with this lathe to accept a Predator bumper. So that's one thing I like about doing that. You can actually make the cue from start to finish. You can make the cue from this machine. So you can have the cue butts, and a lot of people too is you can actually have different shafts. You don't have to make your own shafts, because a lot of people they'll ask how much is it to just make the butt, because the shaft, we all know, is really 90% of the cue itself. With the shaft, that's why I'll change cues out. This is since I bought my lathe, I had a cue every year. Since 2000, I bought this lathe 2021, and then I had my first cue. Then 2022, I had a different cue. 2023, another cue. 2024, different cue. And then of course now this is 2025, and I have another cue. I keep saying I'm going to stick to one cue, but nope. What it does, it also makes you more proficient. You'll build your cues, and then you'll grow from it. You want to know what your limits are, because the thing is, you'll have it from a simple Mary Jane cue. Now my goal is actually to make points, because now I know how to make core cues. I'm going to do points. So, and of course the shaft, you can actually make shafts from this lathe too. There are videos on how to actually make shafts, because you can get your 30-inch squares, 1 inch by 1 inch by 30, and actually make a shaft. This came off my CNC, but for the taper. But like I said, you can actually get blanks. I had a lot of blanks from Shimeki, and I'll turn them. That's how I started turning first on the to make my shafts. Because once you make your shaft, and then you like your shaft, you pretty much keep it. Because the thing is, this will give you a consistency. Is the shaft? It's not the cue butt. The cue butt just gives you they always say it's 10%, but it's your tip, how the front end is built, if it's low deflection, with deflection, the ferrule itself, and of course your joint, and this one had, like I said, this one had a weight in the back, so that this is actually heavier than the front end. Even in torrefied wood is really light, but the weight balance is a lot heavier on the back end versus the front end, because that's where the deflection is. And having the accuracy of your tailstock to your headstock, and of course, forgot to mention, if you're going to do joint work, is actually having carbide drills. That's probably the most important. That makes a big difference versus having high-speed steel or any other coating and all that. Is purchase some carbide, 100% pure carbide, because this does not walk. So that's the biggest thing. This will never walk on you. It's as accurate as it can get. But the thing is, accuracy for drilling a hole on any material, if you ask any person that uses a lathe, is actually boring. But the thing is, this will give you that start, then you get your bore to actually get a different size, because on threading, especially putting a pin in, they have different bore sizes. But the thing is, I actually, like I said, I built this shaft, and thing is, having an accurate drill that does not walk, because this drill is actually drilled into the front end. So my front end are hollow up to this point, because that's how far my drill is, and I drilled it to this size. That's why when I built my torrefied wood shafts, I'll tell them I'll never go lower than 12/7, because this is 5/16. So having this all cored out, this makes it brittle, and already you don't want this already cracking. That's one of the biggest thing. So of course I have two different Ball American taps, because I use Ball American 3/8 by 8. This one all the way, it gives it all the way to the front. This one just is your starter, but I like this one a lot. But I take care of these because these are like very important. Another thing is also when you're making cues, that helps a lot, is getting accuracy. A lot of people won't see these, but I'll share it with you guys. This is like a must. To me, it's a must, because this is what we call a sanding mandrel. This is also carbide. This right here gives you your outer diameter of your cue and your shaft. So I have two different sizes. This one's at 845 and this one's at 840. So that's how I could get my exact measurements. So you get the exact, like I said, you get the exact measurement. So this is how it looks. This is the sanding mandrel. What means is you guys use sandpaper on this, and this material will not be sanded. So you'll be sanding the wood itself, or the CA, the super glue. I forgot how to actually say, but we call it CA or super glue, because this is what the finishes on my cues are, is super glue, and this one also. But this gives you your exact measurements on the shaft. So this will give me 840 on the shaft, and then of course on the butt, this will give me also 840. So it gives it that flush, and then it gets it really close. And then of course you just put super glue on both sides. Then you can, and then with this lathe, big advantage is it'll hold the butt, and I'll use this, put it in the front end, and I'll have the shaft, and then I have the shaft and the butt together. And then I can actually just lightly sand it and get it that flush feel. You don't have a step. That's like one of my biggest pet peeve, is actually having a step between the shaft to the butt. The butt is smaller than the cue, then it'll have a bump going this way, and then or the shaft is bigger than the cue, and then you have a bump going this way. That's like my biggest pet peeve. So it's actually having it the same diameter. So my cues are 840s and it's flush, and then that way my shafts are 840s and they're flush. I don't have a lip or a step on the cue. So these are some of the materials, some of the items I use a lot is when I make my cues. To make your cues, to start making cues, like the sanding mandrels, of course the carbide drill bits, and moved on to the gun drill for boring and having accurate calipers and accurate dial indicators. But this is pretty much what I have for the Mid-American cue. I just gave this review of this long-term use of this Mid-American cue lathe. Hopefully this video is informative. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and leave a comment down below. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe me. Don't forget the thumbs up. Bye bye.
I just gave this review of this long-term